Welcome everybody today to the Builder Workshop. We are working on Slack interactivity. Got the agenda here. We're going to cover things like why should you automate with Slack? What can you do with Slack automations? We're going to stand up a Slackbot in your own instance. You need to be an administrator of any Slack instance in order to do this. If you're not, you can still follow along, but you'll need to get that access later in order to be able to actually do this stuff. And then we're going to go through a couple different co-build aspects. So the first one is it's not actually outcome based. It's more just we need to actually make the connection between Tray and Slack. So we'll help you do that. And then the next two co-builds are actual practical implementation. So we'll look at how to set up slash commands and how to set up shortcuts with modals. These things can kind of be taken as skills that you can use to pair things together and build your own custom implementation later. But these are some of the core skills, and we're going to give you this really awesome, powerful, very scalable template that you can use in your own instance. And of course, we'll finish with a Q&A as we usually do. We've got some resources here. As these come up, they will be shared in the chat, and they'll be accessible on the YouTube description afterwards once this is up on the recording. So why automate with Slack? I'm sure y'all have your own opinions as you're attending this workshop. I'd love to see some of those posted in the Q&A. And thanks to Grant for covering the Q&A today. But here's some of the reasons I think it's really important to understand how to automate with Slack. I'm sure y'all are on Slack, but Slack is one of the most widely used applications in the Fortune 100. So 77 of the Fortune 100 companies use Slack. They have an extremely well-developed API. And it's an incredible platform to build tooling on top of for your internal users, your customer community, which obviously we do in our own Slack community, and more. Using Slack as an interface makes automations feel natural to your users. That could be your internal users or your customer users. Jay, we'll come back to that in a minute. I just saw that note about importing the template. But final thing is it's just using it as an interface makes it more usable, more discoverable, and brings those automations and those high touch interactions with people that you're servicing with your automations. It brings it right to where they need that stuff. So that's some of the reasons why. So speaking about ways you can automate with Slack, I'd say level 0 on this is notifications. I'm sure a lot of people on the call have set up some sort of Slack notifications. We're not really going to focus on that today. That's like level 0. We're going to level 1 today. So we're talking about lookup tooling is an example. This could be implemented through a slash command. So examples of this could be getting data from your CRM, getting data or information from an internal knowledge base and surfacing that to users around your organization. Or you could have a form submission, which comes from a shortcut in our co-build later in the session. And this could be things like creating tickets, surfacing product feedback, or delivering product feedback to your own internal team, and many, many, many more things. So the two different things that we're going to be talking about today, these are not exhaustive, are lookup tooling or slash commands and form submissions via shortcuts. Perfect. I already made a mention of what we're actually building, but we're going to look at that a little bit closer here. So slash command, in case anybody's not totally familiar, this is what that looks like in the UI. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but want to make sure you have a visual as we enter into the rest of the program. Here's kind of an architecture model of how this works between Slack and Tray. So high level, don't get caught up in the details here, but I just want to give people a perspective of what we're doing. So in Slack, you'll see that slash command is invoked. Then what we're going to do is tell the user in Slack, hey, we received your request for this slash command. We're working on it. Then we'll route that to the correct callable workflow that handles that slash command. And then within that callable workflow, we can run our own business logic. I have some business logic templatized in the project that was distributed to everybody and that we'll import soon. But you can create your own. And then we respond to the user again back in Slack. So that's kind of the flow of data, generally speaking, from a high level. We're also going to go through a shortcut with a basic form, as mentioned. Ours is going to be kind of creating a fake ticket. We're not going to create a ticket in a third-party system today because that's not within the scope of what we're covering. But this is showing you exactly how you would do it, and you just need to insert your own business logic for whatever ticketing system you're using, whether that's something in Atlassian like Jira, or if you're using Asana or whatever. So here's the data flow high level for that. So the shortcut is invoked. That's this first image on the left. And then we are generating some of the interface that needs to be generated for the modal that's shown to the user. And then we show the modal, which is this image on the right. So this can be totally customized, whatever you want. Ours is going to have a little pick list, a single radio button, and a text field. And then when the user submits that, we route that submission to the correct callable workflow. We grab, or the next callable workflow starts, and then we apply our business logic and check, is this finished? In our case, for our examples today, 100% of the time, it's going to finish yes here. There are ways to build this out into more complex modals, which we're not going to cover today, but it's possible we could talk about it in the community or have another session in the future, where it won't be finished and will actually generate a new modal. So another page or an updated version of the modal based on inputs from the user. But that's not something we're going to be covering today. Just want to make sure people know where you can take this later. Now, one thing that I think is the benefit of how we've designed this and how we built the project is you actually get to do both of these things from, one project and one ingestion. So the slash, whether it's a slash command or a shortcut, these are going through the same process, and then we're routing them based on what they actually are, two different callable workflows. So you can see, ingestions happening at a singular point, easier to manage for you as a tray builder. You're normalizing the data all in one place, and then you're routing based on what type of payload that is, or which action was invoked, and then you're adding your business logic and responding to the user downstream. So this makes it extremely scalable, makes it easy to monitor, and honestly, this is an implementation that we are going to have to overhaul some of our stuff, which we built a long time ago to match this new format. So one important building principle, modularity. If you saw it before, you saw that we were talking a lot about those callable workflows. They're extremely important. Why does it matter? Because it helps you scale, and it helps you iteratively build on top of a system that's pretty rock solid. And you can experiment, but you don't have to build from the ground up each time. It also helps with uptime. So if one of your slash commands breaks, it's not going to take down the rest of your infrastructure around slash automation or Slack automations. And it makes it easier for debugging because you can go to a specific workflow and grab the logs for that. You don't have to look through the logs for all slash commands. You just go to the specific one that broke and you just troubleshoot within that context. Very, very helpful, and highly recommend building this way whenever you can. So this is a good implementation of modularity, but you can apply this thinking to other places in your Slack or your tray instance as well when you're building automations. Okay, so I'm going to give you the visuals on how to create an app, and then we're actually going to walk through and do it together. Reminder for anybody who joined late, you have to be an admin in your Slack instance or of a Slack instance in order to do this stuff, but you can follow along. This is being recorded and it'll be accessible for you afterwards. So the first thing we need to do is go to the apps dashboard. Grant, if you don't mind throwing that in the chat for everybody, that would be very helpful. Thank you, sir. And we're going to create an app from manifest. We copied the manifest. And that manifest is also something that we're going to drop in the chat. So there's a public GitHub link that you can grab. And again, I'm just showing you quickly the path to do this, and then we'll do it together. So you copy the manifest, you build through that method, then we're going to add an app icon, install it to our workspace, and check Slack to see if the bones of what we're building today have already showed up in Slack. So let's work on this together. I'm going to drop my screen share and switch to a full screen share so that we can have Slack open at the same time. Once those things pop up, please do let me know if the resolution's okay, because I'm working on a second monitor. I want to make sure everybody can still see that. Okay. Fixing my Zoom a little bit. Grant or anybody else on the call, feel free to let me know if you need more screen resolution at any time, or a better Zoom or anything. Please feel free. So let me,
Looks okay right now, Austin. I'll keep an eye on the Q&A in case things change.
great, thank you, thank you. So what we're gonna do is create the app. So right away, I'm gonna open two things. I'm gonna open that apps link in another tab, and then I'm gonna open that GitHub public link. I'm not a developer. You don't need to know much more about GitHub other than there's a quick and easy copy button for this. So we're gonna copy that right here, this double square icon in the top right. And then we're coming back to Slack, this page with the apps. We're going to create new app. And then from an app manifest, select the workspace. I'm going to drop this into one of my testing workspaces. And I'm going to hit next. And then you can, whatever you want to do to delete all the text that currently sits in there. I'm going to paste the manifest in that we copied from GitHub. And the next thing we're going to do is just hit next. That should be it. There are different ways, order of operations that we could do this. I think this is the best one for the getting the most people to success for today, just because it makes it an iterative build. But some people who might be more technical will see that we could have taken a shortcut, but we're going to drive it this way. So when that happens, you can see what scopes are we doing, what features are being implemented. So you can see a shortcut's already built into this. You can see a slash command's already built into this, and interactivity is already built in. And this gives you a leg up. This helps you get your app going. You can use this manifest anytime you want to start the process of building a Slack app. I think it's a pretty good first pass at creating an app. Now, coming back here, we've done that. The next thing we're going to do is add the app icon. So we've provided a logo for you that you can grab from our public Google Drive link. And if we scroll down on the homepage of our app, you can add that icon. This just gives our bot a complete look. It looks like an error in our instance if we don't at least get the image there. That's the only visual thing that we're going to spend time on. And then we're going to install into our workspace. So let's do that. This is the place where you can do final checks on two things. One, which instance is it being installed in? So I've got 2080 ME here. And you can check the scopes. So what rights does this have? And the way we've scoped this bot with our manifest is to have the most narrowly scoped kind of auth that we could possibly allow to still get some of this stuff done. So this is going to pass most security checks in terms of your internal teams, making sure that you're not giving too much power to a Slackbot. So I'm going to hit allow. You can see that we have an app that just appeared here in Slack on the right-hand side. So that's a great sign. And the next thing we'll do is let's check in our instance of Slack, is there a slash command? And when I hit slash, I see that there is a slash command right at the top. It's called tray help. We don't need to use it right this second. We'll come back to that. Actually, I mean, feel free to give it a whirl. You can just hit enter and nothing will happen. That's expected. We haven't connected tray to Slack, so that's totally expected. That was just to make sure people, we're experiencing that as we go along. Now, the other thing that we're looking for is if I go to any message anywhere in this Slack instance, is there a shortcut? And I'm not seeing it here. This is a different test one that I'm seeing. But if I go to more, I should see a shortcut called create a ticket. And again, if I click that, it's not going to work. It's not set up yet, but it's good to know that it's here. So the bones are there. We've successfully gotten the Slack side of the app mostly taken care of. I want to do a pulse check before we move into the part where we need to connect the Slack app and tray together to see, are people with me? Unfortunately, unlike other builder workshops, this isn't something that we can test to see if people are kind of keeping up with us on this one. Are you running into any issues? Were you able to get the manifest imported? Feel free to throw some in the Q&A to let us know how you're doing. Otherwise, I will keep rolling in about 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to keep moving then. Assuming that everybody's there or that you're going to keep watching and do this later because you don't yet have admin access, which is totally understandable. Let's keep moving. Slack app. So the next thing that we need to do is import the project. So I'm going to ask Grant to make sure that that link is there. Perfect. Thank you. And it should look like this. You might have already imported it. That's fantastic. I'm going to hit use template. And then it shows me that I have this name. I like to rename it. I'm going to keep it this name so I can tell which one is the one I'm working on. Actually, I'm going to do a quick Builder Workshop Live. Save changes. Okay, so there's lots of workflows in here, but what are the instructions for the first thing we need to do? Enable the webhook workflow. Okay, I'm seeing 2 people having an error importing the workflow due to dependencies. Can you confirm, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Laura or Lara and Jay, were you doing it from the templates page? And can you give us the exact error message that might be coming up? That'd be very helpful. And maybe Grant will be able to help on the side. Yeah, and we'll try and figure that out. Sorry about that. But for now, I'm going to keep moving. So we've got the webhook here. This is the webhook workflow that we're asking you to enable. So you come in here and enable the workflow. And the other direction that I had there is add a terminate step. So that's just while we're testing. We don't want to end up running a bunch of steps and having all these failures. So let's just add a terminate for best practice right there at the top. And then we grab the URL from the trigger. So right click, copy public URL. And we need to add this webhook to our Slack app. So there's 2 different places we need to do this. And we need to make sure we change save the changes on each of those pages. So back to our Slack app. I'm coming to interactivity and shortcuts. And I just need to overwrite this template in the manifest URL, paste that, save changes, looking good. And the next thing is I go to /commands, use this edit area, and then come in and replace the /command URL there as well. Save the changes. All right. In this case, we only have, well, for interactivity, we just have to do it one time throughout the life of this app. But in the /command, we need to do it every time we create a new /command. So for this specific /command, or this specific app, we only have one /command in the manifest. So there's only one existing right now. So we only updated it once. But if you were to continue building this out, you need to add that webhook URL every single time to that request URL. Okay. Now we've got one more administrative Slack thing to do, but it's in between Tray and Slack as well. We need to create the bot authentication. So if I come into Tray, I'm going to open the 2 workflows that say System X in their titles. So I've got the workflow with the webhook trigger, and I've got the 2 workflows with System X open. And I'm going to go to the one that's message_action. And I'm going to come to this HTTP client. This is the only one in our workflow that requires this right now. But Shorthand is we are working on incorporating this function into the Slack connector, but for now you have to use an HTTP client. So we need to set up an authentication for it. The way we're going to do that is go to the HTTP client, create new authentication. You can do this from anywhere, including the authentications menu, but I like doing it from right within the workflow. We're going to use the generic service. And then we'll come back to that in a second. Generic service. And for authentication name, I like using the year, month, day, date format, what service you're connecting to, your use case, and the person who has that auth. And then we'll come back to this slide in a second. So for that, that would be 2023, 10, 18, Slack, Trey.io bot, Austin. Then when I hit next, we're going to be asked to add a property. The name of that property is going to be access_token. Then we need to go get the bot token, which I've got a screenshot of where that lives here. I'm going to cut my screen share for 1 second while I grab that because that information is live on the screen, even though I'm going to delete the bot to be careful after this. Just going to drop my screen share for 1 second while I grab it. And then I paste that into the field that we just created, which is access_token. I hit create authentication. And now I'll come back onto share screen because that's been successfully created. Okay, so we are getting a lot closer here. The next thing, before we move to the next thing, quick touch on why. So yeah, we need to get the bot token. Version 10 of the Slack connector should be able to do this. And when version 10 is updated, we will make those updates in the actual project template. And we can inform all y'all that that's there so that we won't have you won't have to necessarily go grab that. You'll be able to do it directly from the Slack connector and Slack service. Okay, so we've created our auth. We've added it to the HTTP client, which is how we display views. And then we need to add a Slack auth for any of the places where we have messages going out. So let's take a look at that. I'm heading back into the project. And I'm going to the orchestration hub because that's one of the places that we have the actual message. And I'm going to add a Slack auth for the instance where this bot lives. So for me, that's in 28 EME. Now that one's all good. And then we've got one other one in the /command workflows that we need to go to after this one. Add that auth. And then we've got the /command here. And the nice thing is this should ask me to update across all of them and done there. Okay, so we've gotten the administrative parts done. Now let's zoom out a little bit. We've covered the data flow diagram. We've covered the administrative stuff. Let's look at what this workflow actually looks like. So anytime I'm also going to remove the terminate here. Anytime a /command or shortcut hits this webhook, we're checking what type of payload is it. It's either going to be a /command type payload or other. Or an interaction payload or other. We do some formatting to make sure we've got the actual payload in the precise structure that we want it in. You can see that here. We've got a thing called category. And then we're getting that payload. So this is the normalization section. Then based on whichever category, so it's either /command or interaction, we're splitting into different places. So again, we're grabbing the payload here. We're saying, hey, if this is a /command, just letting you know in Slack, we're working on this /command. And then we branch and go to one of the callables for the slash command. So here, the one that's pre-built in your app that you installed is this tray help one. So this is the callable where that action is actually taken. And we've got a branch predetermined for you to show you where your next one would go. So you could create your next slash command in the app. And then whatever you name it here in the command is what you would add here to your branch. And then you could add a callable workflow here. You could duplicate this one for the formatting and start adding slash commands here in this branch. So that's called commands. It's got an open triangle because it's open to change. Then we come over here. If it's an interaction, there are a bunch of different types of interactions. You don't have to get too caught up in this. There's lots of notes here for you. So there are pieces of this that are not set up right now, but you could continue to extend the function of this workflow, and it's kind of structured for you that way. We've got callable workflows for a couple different things, and then we've got these finisher workflows that are actually doing the different actions. So this one, you can see the action is we're building a modal and sending it to the person interacting with it. And then this one is after they've submitted the modal, we're actually sending them an answer to let them know that we figured something out or done something for them. Now, I know that some people are having trouble with the project. We'll get that sorted either on the side or with you afterwards to make sure you're all good. But I want anybody who is able to hang in there to go back to Slack and use the slash command this time. Let's see if this works. Live demo pressure. There we go. So we've got first message is only visible to you. So what happened here? It hit the webhook. We can go right through the logs. First thing that happened, we hit the webhook. We did the normalization. It was determined that this was a slash command. Then we sent an ephemeral message, which means this like only to the person invoking it message, saying, hey, we're processing your slash command slash tray help. Then it goes and says, okay, which command is it? But we bought ourselves some time because we told the user that we're working on it. They understand that something's going to come back soon. And then we're sending it to, let me fix my zoom here. Then we're sending it to this callable workflow. So let's open the callable. And in here, we're doing a couple things. So did the person enter any text after the slash command? If false, just answer with this. And the mustache is building the blocks for what we're sending. And then the Slack connector is ingesting the blocks and sending the message. And you can see there's help along the way in this template. So it gives you places you can go to and some information about what's happening in more detail once this all sinks in. If a person does enter text after, so in this example, you can see the feedback that came back is you can try links or help center. So let's try the slash command links. So the first run went to the false branch for was there text after. And then this second run went to the true branch because there was text after. So what happens in that branch? First, we lowercase the text that came in to make sure that we can compare it across these different branches. And then we have branches for each of the different segments of text that somebody could be sending to it. We also have a default. So there's a failsafe. If they sent something we don't know, then that's fine. We'll just hit them with this generic response. So we've got, 4 different Slack blocks being built, passing that data into the Slack connectors. And then, yeah, that's being processed and directed right to the bot in Slack. So if we do that again, but we do help center this time, and I maybe spell help center wrong, we're going to get the generic one. Or if I do it again and do help center spelled correctly, we'll get that one. And so those are going down each of the various branches that are predetermined in here. And this is a really easy way for you to stand this up on your own. You can come in here, you can change in a second exactly what you want this to be. So if we now go tray health test, it's going to be a valid request and it's going to give us that exact information. So I'd love to hear anybody's questions or feedback so far on the slash command side of things. I also seems that we got some people sorted about getting the project in. So Grant, I'm sure you were crushing on the back end there. Sorry, that was causing some people trouble, but looking for anybody who has questions about setting up the slash command or how this is structured in tray. If anybody wants to see what it would look like to modify this live, feel free to let me know. I'll give it a few seconds here. And just a reminder for anybody who was able to just get it imported, the things that we need to, things we need to make sure of are, we need to get the auth in there to generic auth with an access token property. And then you can set up a normal auth for the Slack connector in the different workflows. And we can come back to that during the Q&A if you want some help figuring that out there. Now, one thing that I didn't cover yet is pro tip when you're building this out, make sure you're updating your output schemas. So why does this matter? For right now, I think I imported these all with updated output schemas. So it looks like things are doing okay. Yeah. But typically this would come in this way. So if you were trying to build more functionality, the mapping would look wrong. And if you tried to map it to the trigger, it would look incorrect. So when you are building these out, remember to come in and update the output schemas, because that's going to give you the options that are actually flowing through. And another important place to do that is also on the data storage steps. So get payload storage 5 is a good example. If you're trying to map something to it, like say you've added a new slash command here that you need to map something to, if you come up here, you might not see the data that you're thinking because you haven't updated the output schema. So make sure that you're doing that. Always, but in this workflow, there's specifically data storage steps and callable triggers that are definitely going to need that as you continue to build out. Okay. Let's take a look. I've got a note here. Call workflow 6. Yeah. So if you've got, we looks like Grant identified the issue for the import. So sorry about that. There's an extra piece here where this was mapped to something that was incorrect. So no stress about that. That's vestigial at this point, because we put the warning terminate above it. So you should be able to remove that if you were able to import the workflow. And we'll circle back on that initialization a little bit. I want to keep rolling to cover the shortcut stuff and then leave plenty of time for Q&A and to cover all of that. So the next thing that we're going to go for is the shortcut modal. So we've covered the kind of data flow architecture of this already. We've talked about what it looks like in the tray workflow. It's going to this branch over here. Now let's actually test it and see what happens. So if I'm back in the logs in the orchestration workflow, and if I come somewhere into Slack and grab one of these messages, let's say this was a message from Grant reminded me that I need to do something for the next builder workshop, then I could create a ticket by going to the create a ticket option, which is built directly from our app manifest that we imported when we created the Slack app. And oops, maybe I didn't click that right. There we go. So then that pops open a modal. So let's follow that path. So the first thing, it comes in, normalization at the top. It determines the category. This is an interaction. It goes down the types and calls to message actions. Now this one opens another workflow, which looks at which of the callbacks is this? So which shortcut is this? Now, how does Tray determine this? So when you build your shortcut, or when you extend and build more shortcuts out later, this is the callback ID. So this is not something the user's ever going to see, but you need to name these in a way that Tray can identify. And then what I've done here is I've actually saved it as config data. This isn't 100% necessary, but because you're going to have it in multiple places, I like to have it stored here so that if you update it somewhere, you can just come and update it here, and that will update it everywhere else. You could just have it written right here instead of using config values. So then this is saying, okay, cool. We know we need to make a modal. Which type of modal are we making? And if you want to make a new shortcut, you could put it here, you can add branches, that's where those would go. Otherwise, it's going to call, okay, so this is the type of modal, it went down this path. Perfect, let's make that modal. Then it goes to another callable that just does the modal creation. So first thing it does, obviously it's just a trigger, kicks off the workflow. Then we're setting a data storage of all the information that's coming through the trigger under a unique key. I like using callback ID underscore trigger ID, user ID from the trigger. And then we're going to look this up later. So this needs to be scoped to the account level to actually process this submitted modal. So this helps pass information between the modal and the downstream impacts, the invocation of the modal and the downstream. Then we design the actual modal. This is all done using Block Kit Builder. And I've got some links to the API docs that can help you if you're having trouble. And then we use the HTTP client with that authentication that we made using the bot token. And we actually display the modal, and you can see this is kind of built out for you. I've also got a note here that says only edit fields labeled text in this step. So for example, you can edit the Tray bot name. You could say modals are awesome. And now you can see that this is pulling modals are awesome. Coming back here, there are a few other things that you can change. So you can change the name of the submit button, change the name of the cancel button. But if you want to change the actual content of this, then you do that through the blocks, which are here. Okay, now let's say his request is something forward seeking. For the next workshop, let's do X. And then if I submit this, where's it going to go? Let's follow the path again. So it's coming into our orchestration workflow. And then it's going down, down, down into the same thing. So we've got the normalization happening. It's branching after that. And then it's going to call this callable workflow, which looks similar to the last time we were here. This is determining which submission type is it. Okay, it's this submission type. Go to that one, and then it's going to respond first by grabbing the actual information that we're storing under data storage previously. And this is coming in from the actual Slack payload. And then you have this Slack message that's being sent out. We've chosen to make it ephemeral in the template. And you can see there's more to do here. Really what we want is there would be steps here, which are your business logic. So for example, on our team, we prefer to use Asana most of the time for our task management. So we would create the ticket in Asana here, somewhere in between the data storage and Slack. And then we would send the information of that ticket to the user through Slack afterwards. So this is kind of the zone for shortcuts where this project is ready for your changes and your updates for you to make it usable and practical for your team. Now, I know that's a lot. That's a whirlwind tour. And again, unlike previous workshops that we have run, this one, we're not able to pace with you as much, unfortunately. So I'd love to hear where people are, what people are thinking, where you're getting stuck if you have further questions. But before we get there, I'll wait to see if some of those come in through the Q&A. And while we're looking there, future possibilities. So just talking about where could you take this in the future? So you can create complex multi-step interactions. So you can see we're dynamically tagging somebody in the dynamically tagging somebody in the modal. You could have a create event, which calls a third-party API. You can have dynamic drop-down list that people can select from. You could have help links in here. Possibilities are really, really wide open for you to create amazing modals that people can interact with. Also, we've got app homepages possibilities. So when you go to something like Google Calendar, you can have, kind of a hub for people in here, an internal interface that all runs on the backbone of Tray, which is really helpful. But we're not covering either of these today because they're a bit more advanced. So we want to make sure there's an appetite for that level of work that we could do. So shifting over to Q&A, I want to leave plenty of time because I know that we might need to circle back to stuff related to project import. So I'll be keeping my eyes on the chat and the Q&A to see what we have. All right, not seeing much coming up in the chat right now, but would love to hear from some folks. I mean, I see Connor, if you've got any questions, feel free to come on and throw them in the Q&A. Michael Moore, some other familiar faces, feel free to throw something out there. And all right, perfect. That's good feedback. I understand. We'll get you the recording and make sure that you are able to do this. And we'll be looking for your feedback and questions when you're working on this through the community as well. All right. Well, I'm going to throw the wrap up poll up there then. I've got one final thing to chat about as we are closing here. For anybody who's on the more technical side, which I imagine some people on this call definitely are, you've been building on Tray for a while and all that good stuff. We've got our next builder workshop scheduled for November 29th. It's going to be on something that's brand new that is in its beta launch right now. And we're really excited to get it into everybody's hands. It's our connector developer kit. So it's a whole new way for you to build connectors and to deploy them. And it has, already surpassed the capabilities of our wonderful connector builder. And we're really excited to see more people playing with this. So we're going to have a training via the next builder workshop on November 29th with the CDK. And we'd love y'all to be there. Please let any of your colleagues know. And yeah, we're excited to have a few people from our product team joining for that one. And it really is going to be a game changer, we think, when people can build and deploy entirely their own custom connectors with no limitations due to the new CDK experience. So really, really looking forward to that, and looking forward to questions from anybody who wasn't able to get it set up in time today. to follow along live. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for following along. Yes, Connor, good question. So CDK is different from connector builder. It happens completely within the command line interface. So it's a developer first experience. And yeah, like there are little nuances to building things on the connector builder that are restricted because it's an interface type tool. Whereas this is not, it doesn't have an interface, it's headless. So people can build connectors using raw code. We're using TypeScript for the CDK. Absolute game changer. Totally agree, Connor, and Grant agree. You don't have to be technical to be able to work through it if you're a tinkerer. So it's something that we'd love to see everybody out for. Well, everybody's answered the welcome poll there. So really appreciate it. Please join the Slack community if you haven't already. There'll be a link in the follow-up email, and we're hoping to see you at the next Builder Workshop and to answer all the follow-up questions from this session in the community. We can't wait. Thanks so much, and talk to you soon.